I am now live. We are still waiting for our guests to arrive. I believe they shall quite soon. My name is Samuel Trapp. Today I will be having a discussion. I don't want to call it an interview because he's going to ask me some things and I'm going to ask him some things. He is with the French press, and I don't want to butcher his name. I would like to say it correctly, so I'm waiting for him uh, to arrive. I am connected. Oh, I believe we're all here, are we not? There we are. And are you there now?
Yeah, now I'm there. Yeah,
There
I
we
heard
go.
everything. You just had to let me in.
Well, I've let you in.
So
You are
now
new
we're
here.
connected in this wonderful world.
We are connected. I hope this works out well. Honestly, I was doing a show last night and it booted me off for about 2 minutes. I had to come back on. So as long as technology works with us, I think we will be okay. You are in Paris
Hi.
right now, yes?
Yes, I am in Paris right now. I came back from Russia, well, yesterday night. No, wait, 2 days ago night, in middle of the night. It was a long trip back from the end of the world because with the sanctions, Kazan is quite far.
Yes,
I've met you there. It was very nice to meet you there with the other wonderful people to
yes.
understand what is going on in our world. And I'm sorry if there is sometime some little noise from my children because it's a holiday. We are also having our own kind of Halloween here in France, so it will be should be cool. But I'm not at the office, so I hope everything will be all right as well.
Well, I hope, how much time do you have today?
Well, we can spend all day together, but
Oh,
maybe it will
all
be
day.
boring.
Well, then, we
Well,
better be interesting then. We would like people
I hope so. Yeah, I hope
to
so.
stick around that whole time. Our topic today, we were going to discuss is the U.S. elections, their effect on the world, on America, and on us. And before we did that, I wanted to thank you publicly for coming on my channel. I know that you're going to put this out on your own as well. Would you like to tell us
Yeah.
about that?
Well, we have our own YouTube media that's rising and working pretty well. It's called Fréquence Populaire. For the moment, is in French, but we will have soon English broadcast. So we will be able to reach our friend in America because we are very friendly with Americans. I had the chance to live in your great country. I lived in Boston. I was at the MIT like 24 years ago, and yeah, these elections are important for you, of course, Americans, but it's important for the rest of the world, and especially, well, country that are a member of NATO, like we are in France. And so we are waiting for the 5th of November to see what will come out of that.
What do you think is going to come out? Do you have a prediction based on things that you've read in French media or anywhere?
Yes, based on what I'm reading in the French media and in the American medias, looks like Donald Trump should win. But you never know how the election works. It's very funny what happened in Moldavia. I think that many people in America do not know where is Moldavia, but there was just a referendum in order to know if the country wants to join or not to join EU, and it's pretty much the same situation like in Ukraine. I could trigger a war, but well, at 9 o'clock in the evening, the no to the entry won with 54%. But during the night, Moldavian abroad voted somewhere, and the result was 50.4% for the yes
Yeah.
during the night. So it's kind of funny, yeah, because
Well, do you believe that? I've got a little bit of difficulty with that type of election.
yeah,
I
if
mean, not that we can do anything about it, but
no,
what
we
are your
cannot.
thoughts on that?
Election is great if they are fair. We love democracy, and democracy is, I think, the best system. But we have to have fair elections. The problem was it's Stalin who said the right words about elections. He said it's not important to know to the. This is not the organizations of election that's important. It's important who's counting.
That's
And the
right.
problem is who's counting.
Yeah, the problem
That's
is who
always the
gets to do
problem.
the counting or who gets put
Yeah.
on the ballot in the first place. And so and something similar is going on in the country of Georgia right now. And
Exactly.
it's really democracy, if you want to call it democracy, but again, democracy is based upon the eyes of the people who are doing the counting. And I'm not sure I believe in that either in all of the counting systems, because he who controls the counting system controls who wins the election.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But let's see. So, well, I think Trump should win, but maybe I don't know. We'll see. And anyway, we see from France that the American society is very divided.
Very, very
Uh,
divided. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the voting violations with respect to that.
sure,
There
sure.
was news that came out just even a couple of days ago, in the last couple of days. There's a young man, and they haven't identified him yet, and that also is very interesting. But a 19-year-old Chinese national, not a US citizen, at the University of Michigan, voted in the Michigan elections. And he went and he registered at one of 6 voting sites on the Michigan campus, and they allowed him to register. They gave him a ballot. He filled it out, filed his vote, and that vote will count. They can't take it back right now, according to all the news that has come out about it. But then he called and said, "Oh, by the way, I lied. I said I was a citizen, but I'm not." And so his vote, I mean, you can't vote in a presidential election if you're not a citizen, but if the system is such that it allows you to vote, and ever since the gates were opened in by the Biden administration on day one, I always said what they're doing, not for future, I mean within 4 years, they want enough people. The election was so close in 2020 that they want enough people on the ground. Why do you think they were busing them to specific places on the map? They were doing it so that they could vote in this election. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not. I don't have enough information about that, but maybe uh, a few years ago we had a mayor in Paris. His name was Jean Tiberi. He was mayor
Mhm.
of Paris, and he was a champion because he was making dead people vote, and also people who doesn't exist, and that were registered in streets that well, number in the streets that doesn't exist. It was very good.
Well,
He made voted hundreds of people that are were not able to vote because they're dead. Well, so I don't know if it's as much worse in the United States, but yeah, I think anyway that there is we need in all the democratic countries to reinforce the popular control on the counting process, and because democracy works only if everybody is convinced that it's fair, or you're
Well,
not anymore in democracy.
that is absolutely correct, and I'm worried about this year for things like that. Our Supreme Court just in the last week uh, said that um, they made a ruling on this particular issue on eliminating people from the rolls that aren't citizens or are dead. You know, it's taking them off of the roll, and the Supreme Court has spoken on that. But this honestly doesn't come up often enough for the Supreme Court to make decisions such as this. And so they've made a decision on this, and uh, they've sided with the side of taking off people who shouldn't be on the ballot. And so that's a big deal because now other states can look at the rules that are put in and know that you can remove dead people from the ballots. I tend to watch a lot of alternative source news, not the big news providers in America, but the smaller ones like on YouTube and on smaller local media. Our radio station, by the way, which is damradio.com, has some great people on it that speak politically. And I think we're seeing a little bit of a rise in people who might believe similar to what you have expressed and what I have expressed, that it all depends on how fair the election is. And so we really need to keep that as the paramount goal and not let people who aren't authorized to vote in America vote in America. There's
Yeah, sure.
I saw yesterday an alleged violating of an electronic machine where Donald Trump isn't on the ballot, or you can't push the dot to vote for Donald Trump. Now, people also make things up online. So I'm not, you know, you have to check your sources, but we really need to control our structure. How does France, how do you feel about your structure there?
Well, in France, expect the problems that I told you, for example, with our former mayor in Paris. I think the process is pretty much okay. We have less issues than you have in in the United States, especially on a national level. But you have another problem. We spoke about the counting issues, but you have the respect of the decision that was voted. And we have a huge problem in France with that, really, already now more than 20 years. And more and more people are just not voting because they consider that their vote is not taken in consideration, and it's useless to spend 1 hour to go to the voting place, and then the politicians do not respect it. And this started with the referendum in 2005, which is a very important moment in the French political life. This was a referendum about the new constitutional European treaty. And in 2005, the French people voted massively no. No, we don't want that. As the Greek voted no in 2015, as the Dutch people voted no in 2006, as the Irish voted no. But what they did in Ireland, they pretty much told them, well, you didn't vote as you should have voted, so you will revote. And they revoted, and the yes won. It's funny. And in France, the politicians from the left and the right, we may say in the United States it will be like the Democrats and the Republicans, they met together in the parliament in Versailles, And 3.5 years after the vote of the French people, they decided to do anyway the yes. And they put in place what the people voted against. So that's the real problem we have here. And we had just a very, very messy succession of elections, especially the parliament this last summer. Half of the population.
Yes, I was observing some of that. So
Yeah,
you think?
but
I
the
apologize.
people they're not listening to people, and now we have a very weak government in the middle of a huge economic crisis, and that's the consequence of not respecting the vote of the people. And it's better to have not a democracy, if you to be frank, why to have a democracy if you do not respect the vote of the people? That's a I think a big problem in our modern democracy. We are not. It's not anymore the United States of the Roosevelt and Kennedy period in the 60s, the 70s. It's not the France of the General de Gaulle. At that time, we were more respecting the voters in the United States and in France.
Yes, I think we have. There's a survey that came out this past week in America very recently that that Americans believe that will electing Trump or Harris weaken democracy. They were asking questions about should the loser of 2024 concede or accept the election results. And they say that everyone should accept the election results. But last time in 2020, you saw that on the January 6th, when the Electoral College is supposed to be convened to count the vote, that's when they claim the so-called American insurrection attacked or stormed the Capitol. And these words I disagree with. I think there were people there to show that they were protesting these sorts of things. And the people in charge of government seized upon the words attack and insurrection and destroyed the lives of the people that showed up there so that they can feel safe and secure, that no one will question them again. Against the government. So if you jail enough people, you'll get the rest to shut up. And so I'm not sure what's going to happen this year, but I think it's if this election isn't a blowout on one side or the other, and I don't mean to speak in too much slang. You understand the word blowout, having lived in Boston. Yes. But yes, we want one side to really win. This 0.02% victory is I don't know that it's a victory. It might create more problems than it solves if we don't have a strong victory on one side or the other, because then they feel justified in not paying attention to half of the country or to any of the country and just running things the way they've been doing for my whole lifetime, basically. That they have been.
It depends, because, well, sometimes you have election where you won with a very little majority. This happens in democracy. You cannot control that. But this also signifies something. And if you're a president and if you are elected with I don't know, 50.5%, well, you have to be president of the whole country. So that if you are not strongly elected, then you should address to your whole population, and say to them, okay, we hear what you said. Well, we won, but we will not apply fully our program, and we will manage to find a way to listen to what you said. But the problem is that they're not doing that. And even when they're losing, that's the big problem, once again, in France. So I don't know. Once again, I'm listening to what's happening in the United States. We're very eager to know what will come out. We have a good idea of the consequences on the international stage. Maybe we will talk about that. But I'm not very informed about, well, I don't know much about the insurrection and the prize and what's happening in Washington. But what I can tell you is what happened here in France with the movement of the Gilets jaunes, the yellow jackets. It was huge in 2018, and it was huge demonstration all across France, not only in Paris, everywhere, uh, by very simple French people, not politicians, not people that have been jailed for anything, just people who want, well, better life, basically, yeah, and more respect. Of that's why um, the main topic was we want you to respect our votes. That's why they asked for a referendum, for more referendums. Yeah. So direct expression of the people on important topics. But what was the response? It was a huge repression. I don't know if you're aware of that in the United States, but 12,000 people were arrested in a few months. 3,000 went straight away in the front of a judge, and 1,500 finished in prison. They had no record whatsoever. They did nothing before that, and what they did was demonstrating. Plus, 5 people lost their eye. No, 5 people lost their hand because some special police grenade had exploded. More than 20 lost an eye, and 700 have war wounds in the head because they were hit by these. It's this special police ball. They're not real bullets, but they're big plastic soft thing. But if you fire on the head of someone at under 20 meters, well, you got war wounds, 700, and we are in
Yeah.
France. We are not at war. It's not a revolution. So it's a crazy repression. So of course people are afraid. And then after that, they do not want to go in the street. It's terrible. I did most of these demonstrations. One of them was in the lovely city of Bordeaux. Really, it's a bourgeois city. It's very nice. It's beautiful, and people were demonstrating completely pacifically. It was very. It's what's cool. Was dancing. The opening of the demonstration was made by a kind of dudes who like the American Harley Davidson bikes. So they were in the front with the flags, and it was very, very sympathetic. And there was one guy who was a little drunk, and he was insulting some policemen. And right away, they shoot all around with these bullets, special bullets, and the windows of the car in the street were blowing up all directions. And we heard, like, it was 20 meters behind me, a terrifying cry of a young girl. She was a student, and her father was crying because she received one of these bullets in the middle of the face. She will keep that for her life, and that was for nothing. So yeah, that was a huge repression. And if I can summarize that way, they're afraid of the people.
Well, I think they should be afraid of the people in America also. I honestly didn't know as much as you do about what goes on in France, but I am worried about some of those similar events. We see what our police, what our government does to people that disagree with the government, including shooting. I believe their pellets here is what they use, those hard pellet rounds or sandbag rounds, whatever it is they're shooting. They do a serious amount of damage to people. And you know, the whole goal is just like in COVID, just to keep people quiet, to keep people home, to keep people from Well, knowing the truth, or not getting their voice out. Our voices are not anyone's great concern these days. Only the voice of the government matters, and whoever is in control of the government controls what that voice says. And so these are very serious fights. And you're still in. Do you go to those sorts of rallies anymore, or do you back off of those?
No, I'm doing politics, so I go in the different rallies. But once again, after the repression of the yellow jackets, well, things changed, and plus we had last year they did a reform on the retirement. Yeah, and it's funny, 92% of the people who are working didn't want that reform. 75% of the French people say no. But we had more quiet demonstrations, and well, nothing happened. They just implemented the reform that the people doesn't want it, and that was the last big demonstrations in France. But once again, the problem is our democracies are sick. It doesn't mean that agree with the people who vote for Trump or those who are voting for this or that in France or elsewhere. The problem is that when you do not respect the vote of the people, your democracy is sick. That's point, and that's we cannot have an elite who decides that the people is not voting as he should vote. That's absurd. Then you're in China. I mean, once again, what is the necessity to have a false democracy? Let's have a kind dictatorship or an empire. It's cool as well, no? But we will not have this joke anymore of elections where people is not listening.
Well, I had a discussion with someone about the level of democracy in leadership roles, or the level of government with leadership, and whether it really depends upon democracy. You can argue that Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping, either one, are brutal dictators, like they like to say in the West, but they get results for their people. And it appears, from an outsider's point of view, how are they becoming so well received and accepted and doing things for their own people? If results are what matters, is democracy the key question? And I think what did you call it, a failing democracy, or a struggling democracy
Sick democracy.
A sick democracy is almost worse than no democracy at all. Ours also is sick, in my point of view, as an American citizen. I don't see that, whether it's the voting machine being controlled by one party or the other, the counting process being controlled by one party or the other, the ability to be put on the ballot being controlled by one party or the other. Sometimes I feel like we've outgrown our straight up democracy. What do you know, for example, about our electoral system versus the vote of the overall vote? How much the overall vote counts versus the electoral college? Are you familiar with how that works in America?
Well, I'm not very aware of these differences, but in general, the electronic vote is a problem. It's already complicated to have a popular control on the normal way to vote. So electronical, you may have so much fraud and so much levels. You don't know which company is behind. Is it a company who is financing this party or the other? It may be open to hackers. It's very bad. Anyway, it's on a philosophical level, it's wrong. We are
Yeah,
more and more divided by these tools. They are very useful, but more and more people are alone in their homes, and voting is a social process. It's something we do with other people. People you may not like completely, people with whom you can disagree on political issues, but we talk with them. You go, as the Greek and the Roman, you go on the forum, you talk, you yell, you're not happy, you're demonstrating, but it's social. So, as the voting, you go on a place, there is other people, you can discuss, you see the process of voting. You are a nation. But if you vote on your phone or your computer, you are alone somewhere in the dark with the machine, and you're clicking and hoping you're not making a mistake. You're alone. And democracy is not being alone. Democracy is being together, even if you do not agree one with other. But so I'm strongly against any of these electronical vote. That we are going toward this also in France, with the same issue, I will say. Uh, Not speaking of the old people who are, have the difficulties to understand where to click and what to do the correct thing. And I think not only fraud, but there is a lot of mistakes. People just voted for someone who they do not wanted to vote just because they made a mistake, and you cannot go back and.
well, that such are electronic systems. And this is again, a personal view, is that during COVID, the boy, the Democratic Party are experts at, well, so are Republicans at taking advantage of a crisis. And in America, the COVID crisis allowed a lot of changes to our voting structure and how votes are conducted, and ballots being mailed, ballots showing up late, ballots showing up several weeks late, and whether they're counted or not counted, like the Chinese student I told you about being able to register to vote, different rules in every state about whether you can vote in a local election as a non-citizen in some states, but how do they know whether you're also voting for the national elections at the same time? You get the same ballot. It's not
Yeah.
like they can be there in the booth with you when you make your choices, and you're just going on your honor not to vote in a national election. And there are far too many questions unanswered in elections than answered when you use those sorts of procedures.
I have a funny story.
Mhm.
In 2017, I was, 2018, well, 17 maybe. Well, I was an international observer during the regional election in Venezuela. And
Excellent.
there, well, I did the same in Turkey and, well, different places. But and in Venezuela, which is not very respected in the United States, they were using these voting machines everywhere, electronical voting machines. So I've been to the Central Commission, and they explain, of course, there is no fraud, and look at the system, it's fantastic. Wires are going there, and you have the supercomputer and other wires, and, well, it's fantastic. There can be no fraud. Okay? But the funny thing is that there were Americans who were defending their electronic voting system in the United States, saying in Venezuela, No, it's electronical, so there will be frauds. It's very funny. Something is working in the United States, but the same machine is not working, or it's a machine for fraud, for making frauds in Venezuela. So it's
Well,
one or the other. It's one or the other. And
well,
I
especially if
think
they're the same system, and America has a habit of saying one thing and doing another for itself. You know,
yeah,
if it's so does every other country. By the way, I don't mean America's alone in this, but obviously I have more experience in the American system, and we have a habit of saying one thing for one party and another for another party based upon whether or not you cooperate with our democracy. We spoke a little bit about that in our BRICS interview when we were talking in Kazan.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Once again, to go back to this Venezuela. In Latin America, you have the Jimmy Carter Organization for Latin America, or something like that. And I was speaking with an American guy at the time there, and he told me about this machines in Venezuela. I said, hey, this is bullshit. Really, they can fraud everywhere. But he said the problem is that we have the same in the United States.
Well,
that's it.
Looks like you might have more experience with our American fraud system than I do, because I don't have access to those machines or know how they work.
I don't know. I'm not such a big computer guy, but well, experts told me that I cannot tell you the technical points, but that there you may have frauds and that way, and to control it is very, very complicated, and very complicated. And sometimes you may have just problems with the machines. Machines are problems. Yeah.
Well, that's true. I thought that the
Some cars
system,
are
when I was a
burning.
young man and I was doing my duty on election day, it always was, and I've always been very interested in reviewing the election decisions in politics in America. And I've always voted, I pay attention. And it used to be that you registered to vote, you went to vote, and the votes were counted. The votes were counted all in the same day. Whatever voting day there was, it's always first Tuesday in November. And that voting day, by the end of that night, you knew the results. There were very few discrepancies. You knew it was over. Now it takes weeks to get voting done. So the
Yeah.
distrust of the system just has grown so much over my lifetime. I have questions about it. I have questions trusting it. And I consider myself to be pretty well informed and pretty knowledgeable on some of these issues. And people always used to say, if it smells bad, it's probably rotten. Well, sometimes it just smells bad. So if it smells bad, it certainly brings up additional questions that we need to answer. And it seems that the answers get further and further away and not closer. And instead, we create other ways of voting that take even longer, or we make the process even more subject to fraud and abuse by allowing people to vote months in advance. Now the discussion in America has been about all of the early voting that is done now in many, many states. Early voting is done, and the election results, they're already putting up who's ahead and who's behind and who they think wins based on early election results in every state.
Which has an effect on voters who didn't made their mind up, and who may choose because they've heard that many people are also voting like sheep. Yeah, they heard that this one will win. Oh, okay, I will vote for this one because or that one or. But we have we have propositions to make democracy real.
Tell me about them.
It's quite. I think it's quite simple. It's you have. We propose that the vote has to be mandatory. You are in democracy. You're a citizen. You vote, and it's a duty, like serving in the army if you have to because it's a war. Yeah, or you're not a citizen, so you have to. And if you do not vote, well, except sick people, I don't know, people that are abroad because some problems they cannot vote. And if you do not vote, you have a fee. But
You
plus,
are what?
like
I didn't hear that word. If you do not vote, you are what?
you have a fee. You have to pay.
Oh, I see. You
It's
have to pay a fine. Yes.
a fine. Yeah, fine. And also, like a jury in a court, when citizens are picked, yeah. Well, you may be picked to witness the election. You like it or not. You are 19 years old and you really want to go to that party with your friends. I'm sorry, you're a citizen of a democracy. You will spend 6 hours of your life watching the elections, or it's a grandmother, or it's a guy working in the factory. He have a special authorization not to go to work because he was picked to check the elections, and it's his duty as well, and it's
Well,
mandatory. So
I like that idea.
And then it's sorry for the word, it's a little bit piece in the ass when you have to do it because you wanted to do something else, but it's not such a long time, and you have a more stronger trust because you know that in this system, I don't know if you live in New Jersey, well, in Oregon it's the same. It's the same rule, and the same working people, normal people are checking the elections. And it's these people who say, well, we have 329 people who voted for Trump and I don't know, 527 who voted for Kamala Harris. And it's sure. There's no bullshit. Well, in that way, you have something that is more true, correct, and very difficult to fraud, to make a fraud with. And also, we propose that I don't know if it's the correct word in English, the white votes are counted, which is not the case. A white vote is a guy who doesn't want to vote for what's proposed.
A white vote is a person
Sorry?
who doesn't want a vote against. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's a vote. If the choice is Trump or Harris, and the guy doesn't want to vote for one or the other, he can vote blank, a blank thing. Yeah, nothing.
Oh, I see. He can vote none of the above. He can vote neither.
Yeah, and this has to be counted as well. And if you have more than, I don't know, 30, 40, 50% of the people who are not voting for one or the other, well, the election is cancelled. That means that the people is not represented by these candidates. Yeah.
Wow. I really like that idea, especially for America, because unlike a lot of European countries, America, we really only have two choices. Yes, there's other people sometimes on the ballot, but they're so small, you're throwing your vote away on those so we're forced to pick one or the other, or your vote won't count at all. And so having a none of the above box would actually be a good idea. I don't know if you're aware of this, but in the 80s, there was a Richard Pryor movie based on that theme where he joined an election, encouraged everybody to vote none of the above. and he won, or none of the above won. And that is that. Sometimes I wish that was the choice. I've said this many times before. I'm not anti-Trump. I don't want to say that I'm 100% for Trump, because I'm really not. But I'm probably, I don't know, 70, 80% behind his ideas. Kamala Harris's ideas and her personality, I'm not even 10% behind that. Uh, I'm not behind any sort of continuation of what we have right now. I I don't know what the right answer is. I wish I did. And I'm not sure that Trump gives all the answers that I'm looking for, but it's a better chance with Trump than with Harris that I get more of what I want. I hope I've explained
Yeah.
the way I intend it, because I don't mean it bad against Trump. But I worry about him somewhat on the world stage myself.
You can.
Yeah, and I know that after speaking with a lot of people internationally, especially at this BRICS summit, that there's a lot of concern about Trump also. Now there's concern about Harris too. She'll just be a rubber stamp for more war. You know, let's have more war. You want more war, vote Kamala Harris. But there's a possibility that Trump might limit that.
Yeah. Well, I'm not American,
Mhm.
as you know. But if I would have been American, I would have campaigned for Robert Kennedy Jr.
Yes.
I think it would have been a great president, and it's a guy who really understands the big issues on the international stage.
I think he's probably the most sane choice of them all.
Yeah,
But my point of view was always that, well, there's no way at all that he wins. And it's just not going to happen. I'd
no,
loved to see something for him. And so a lot of Americans feel the way I do. Why am I going to waste my vote on a guy who cannot possibly win? You know,
I know.
it's we
But
got to
it
pick
was
one or
about
the
what
other,
you said.
unfortunately.
Yeah, it was about what you said. We have to pick one or the other of people we do not like. So it's a problem. Yeah, that's why we have this idea of counting the white votes, while people who do not vote for one or the other, who want someone else. But I spoke also about Robert Kennedy Jr. because um, he said something that neither Trump or Kamala Harris said, and something that another great president, Eisenhower, said in '56. Eisenhower in '56 said that American democracy is facing a big problem. Is that the real power is going in the hand of the military-industrial complex,
And that's
and that's the
exactly
big
where it
issue.
is now, isn't it?
Well, it is now. It's '56. Eisenhower. And Eisenhower is not exactly a lefty Bolshevik guy. He was the leader, the chief in command of the Allied forces in World War II. So, a great American general. Yeah. So if that guy, a general, is saying that democracy is at risk in '56 because the big military-industrial complex has his hands on this democracy, well, that means something, yeah. And this was like almost 70 years ago. So imagine where is your democracy now? And Robert Kennedy Jr. was speaking about that. That's why, in fact, it was impossible for him to be candidate to the end, because he was against the real power in your country. And yeah, I know here, especially here in France, maybe many people I hoping that Trump will win because Trump will stop all these absurd American wars all around the planet, and it's better. And yes, but I heard what Trump said, And Trump made clear for this military industrial complex that the money will continue to go to them, that they will continue to push the French, the European people to buy American weapons, that they will create the situations where people, while countries are afraid and are pushed to buy more weapons. So, unfortunately, if your democracy is run by people that have only one interest, is to making more money with while selling weapons around the planet, well, this is not very good for the planet, for peace, but not very good for your country as well.
I can't say I agree with you so much. It's a part of me wants to start clapping, and say, that's a very, very well put proposition there, because I have tried to say something similar, maybe not quite as successfully. You put that very well, but my worries about Trump are that he's not going to stop the wars. He's made it very clear that he's going to keep funding this Israel, this Middle East, these things in Ukraine. He says he'll end that war, and I hope he does. He says he will get rid of the hostilities and come to a resolution in Gaza, in the Middle East. He will get all of those things done, but I question how. If it's showing up with the U.S. military again inserted in a place where they're really not desired, I don't know the long term that helps us out any. What good did Afghanistan do for the American people over the last 20 years? It funded another generation of military industrial complex companies and fabulous wealth of them. But what did it do for the normal everyday American? Zero, in my opinion. And so I agree with what you proposed, and I love that.
Imagine how insane it is. I mean, while in the rest of the world, during the Republican primary, you had this potential candidate, Nikki Haley. Yeah, I don't know if I pronounce her name correctly.
You said it correctly, Nikki Haley. Yes,
Nikki Haley. Yeah. So, she was something. She was a USA ambassador for United Nations. Yeah, it's not nothing. And she was considered here and by the people who think, well, she's far better than Trump. She's wise. She's a good person. We hope that she will be the candidate for the Republicans. Well, she signed on rockets that have been sent to Israel to shoot on Gaza, finish them all. It's completely insane. It's a level of insanity, of brutality. My God, it's shocking because most of the Hamas is not destroyed. The Gaza is destroyed. Thousands of people, civilians, died there, with absolutely no strategical result. And a potential candidate of the United States for the presidency of the most powerful country in the world, and a great country, former ambassador at the United Nations, is writing on rockets, finish them all. It shows how much, and they did the same with Zelensky.
I remember that. I saw that.
It's insane, and it shows that allegiance to the military industrial complex. That's it. And I really don't know how you are going as a democracy to get rid of them, because once again, Eisenhower considered as a problem 70 years ago. So.
Do you hear that? I'm in Turkey, as you know, and it's prayer time right now. And can you hear that?
Yeah, it's five times a day. So
Five times a day, and it's prayer time right now. And it seems off a little bit.
But I served also in the army, in the French army, and was deployed in Afghanistan with
Oh,
NATO. And one of our small compounds somewhere was wall to wall with a mosque.
uh, so every
And it
morning, I
started.
lived in Qatar. I lived in
It
Qatar
was
for,
5 in the morning every day, so it was a bit hard, but
yeah. Well,
interesting.
you get
It's the
used to
country,
it,
the
but I
culture.
just don't want it to. I just don't want it to bother too much on our content if people can't hear or anything like that. But in Qatar, I got used to it. I lived not far from a mosque, and you hear it everywhere. And in fact, you begin to know the differences between who's praying when you hear them, because depending on the mosque, you're getting the I forget what they call them, the imam or whoever it is that is singing the prayer. You get to kind of recognize their voice. Yes,
Well, while you're in a Muslim country, consider it nice. I mean, everybody has his way, his culture, his religion.
yes,
Why not? It's colorful. Here in France, sometime when you are and like it, you are near to a church. You have these huge bells so ringing every hour. So it's same. But yeah, that's for me. There is no problem. I don't know if for your audience is a problem, but
well, for me,
yeah,
it's no problem at all. I honor
not at
all
all.
all religions, all people, all
Yeah.
countries. I love that kind of thing, and so I just don't want it to. I just don't want it to so that people can't hear us over the prayer time. But I don't mean anything
No, no,
negative about it at all. I like it. So
it's very low. It's very low. You have to concentrate to hear it.
yes, yes. Well, what else did you want to say? Did you have any questions about my thoughts on any of our elections coming up? I I feel somewhat that the U.S. is a little bit of a uh, over the last few years, kind of a banana republic, kind of like Venezuela, kind of like any of the places that you've been, where maybe we need international monitors of our elections to make sure they're free and fair. How do you? I don't know. There could be any
I,
ways to check out our elections.
I have I have a well. There is one thing I like very much. It's the song which was a sociological blow in your country. It's from Oliver Anthony, "Rich Man North of Richmond." You heard that song, no?
If I do, I don't recall it, but I
Uh,
know a lot of
Rich
things that
Man.
I don't recall
Really?
off the top of my head. So,
Well, you should, because it was more listened than when songs when Michael Jackson died. So imagine.
oh,
Okay, but so I have a question for you, because here we're talking about potential civil war in USA. Well, civil war seems to me a bit exaggerated, but what's your thought on that? Could that be? And
well, I don't usually curb what I say. My opinions, I will say, are my own opinions. And if you find me extreme, I'm only backing myself. Everything I say for me. And I'm not speaking on behalf of any government, the rest of America, anything like
sure,
that. I'm
oh,
speaking for
it's
Samuel
thought.
Trapp, and that's it. And what I believe is that these are extremely challenging times in America right now. And I fear, like many other Americans, that we may be thrown into a situation where we do not believe in our elections. After 2020, I had discussions with people who were already there that said our elections have been stolen for quite a few years. And if you don't realize that, you need to do a little more research. And I've watched and I feel that our combination between our press, between our military industrial complex, and between the self-called elitists who call themselves elites. I just I think that those three forces, which is basically your lifelong government, your lifelong military industrial complex, and your lifelong media, are all combined together to keep the same power that they've always had. And they intend to keep it by any means necessary. And if that means cheating a few people out of a vote or figuring out a way to stack the deck for one side or the other, well, that's exactly what they're going to do. And right-thinking people in America, and I like to think I'm one of them, need to be very concerned about this. When we first started this show, I had said something to the effect of, boy, I want it to be so lopsided if Trump wins. I want it to be by a percentage that's so big that nobody can question it. Whether that's possible or not, I don't know. Because if it's razor thin like it was, I think we got big problems. And nobody trusts the government already. If you do, you're in the government. The only people that trust it are the people in it. What? You don't trust me? I'm with the government. Trust me. Those are probably the scariest words in your life. I'm with the government. I'm here to help you. I don't think so. You're not. And you're here to help yourself. And so I have very serious concerns about this, but I will tell you this. If it comes to, I'm a little older today. I served in my military. I feel pretty good about it. I used to practice law. I don't anymore. And but I understand things. I don't think I'm uneducated or unfamiliar with the things that America faces right now. And how we deal with this election cycle is going to be extremely important, especially if come Tuesday, we're only a percentage point apart, which by all indications, that's exactly what it's going to be. So I fear for our democracy too. Do I think that anybody's a threat to democracy, which is what everybody's been calling Trump, or the other way around? The threat to democracy is not fixing the problems that face it right now. And that threat is not Donald Trump, in my humble opinion. The threat are all the lifelong politicians that have been there and created the mess that we're living right now.
What you're saying is very interesting. And it's 95% close to what someone I respect very much is saying every day. And it's a member of that elite. It's Jeffrey Sachs.
Oh,
and Jeffrey Sachs is a Democrat guy. He was a head of Department of Economy in Columbia University, and
I know who he is, and I respect him a great deal. Yes,
but I say for the audience, especially French, he's advisor for Antonio Guterres, the General Secretary of United Nations. So it's really a high-level dude. I mean, he's talking directly with many people working at the White House, especially when it's Democrats, and he's saying pretty much what you're saying. And
well,
this is very.
I like that I came to that conclusion, and with him, and I think. Do you remember when you and I were talking in Kazan? We were talking about Gutierrez showing up to BRICS a little bit before the program that we were airing, and how much of a surprise and a punch in the face to the UN that he showed up, that he showed up to discuss BRICS. I think I think working together to combat these type of things instead of the dictation by one side or the other are pretty much why all these problems exist now. And so I'd really like to see something different.
Speaking about Guterres, it's impressive. Our media are not speaking much about that, and
Nope.
but the people and the country of the global south, they're witnessing that. And what they are witnessing is that Antonio Guterres, General Secretary of United Nations, arrived in Kazan. And also, he was not very cool with Putin, by the way. He said, "Yeah, well, you have to respect international law. The war in Ukraine is not a good thing, blah, blah." Well, the Putin listened to him. But Antonio Guterres is persona non grata in Israel. And after Kazan, Zelensky didn't receive him because he was in Kazan. And so
I
everybody's
remember that. Yep, I heard about that. I apologize. I gotta walk somewhere, and someone's
okay.
knocking on the door here. So I apologize. I gotta figure out what's going on, and I don't speak Turkish, so I don't know what I'm gonna do. But we'll see. I'm carting you with me. Oh, do. Skoro. Okay. Sorry about that. Well,
It's okay.
I've been.
But maybe
I've
we
been.
can finish. We can
Yes.
finish on something we talked also there. Very important. And people, well, much of the people in our countries do not realize that. And that is something that Jeffrey Sachs is speaking almost every day. It's the risk of nuclear war. And I'm saying that because you were one of the guy in the, as you said to me, in the U.S. Army, who worked on these nuclear weapon control issues. And I, in 2018, I spoke with Mr. Grushko, which is number 2 after Lavrov, Minister of International Affairs of Russia, about this issue. And Jeffrey Sachs is saying people do not understand. We are 5 minutes for total annihilation, 5 minutes from midnight of total annihilation, because we have stupid governments that they do not understand that they are not leading simple countries. United States is the biggest or the second biggest or its equivalent country having nuclear weapons. So you have to be wise when you lead a country who has this capacity, because the consequence of a war is the end of everybody, including Americans. And nor did this afraids me as Jeffrey Sachs, nor Harris, nor Trump, but especially Harris, seems not to understand what it is about. And it's same a little bit in France with Emmanuel Macron, because we have also, not so much as you, but enough to destroy the whole planet. We have a lot of nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
And what the people do not know, it's interesting to always speak about that, is that, as we talked in Kazan, there is 10 times less connection between Russia and United States than it was during the Cold War, which is crazy. When it's Brezhnev was there, or Khrushchev and the communists, and it was the evil people, there were more connections. So more ways to pick the phone, or at a lot of levels to calm down things. But during that time, this last 20, 30 years, the capacity of the nuclear weapons improved, the velocity improved, the automatization improved. So it's far more dangerous than the Cuba Missile Crisis, the situation we are in. And everybody is playing with these nuclear questions, which is completely insane. And I will say, vote what you want to vote. But as Jeffrey Sachs said, well, the first job of the president is to keep your country, well, United States, away from war, especially from nuclear war. That's first job. The rest is, even economy is secondary, of course. First
Yes.
job. And they do not. It's for me. It's like they do not understand what it's at stake here, and that's terrible. That's really afraiding.
Well, it's frightening for me too, because like you said, I did work in that sphere, and I actually remember, I was quite young then. I remember talking to people who had been in that field since the 50s, doing underground nuclear testing, making nuclear weapons, putting them all over the world on behalf of the United States government. And my job was to we were getting rid of weapons. We were eliminating underground testing. We were doing what I thought to be something very important in toning down the conflict of the world. Today, the world is at far more conflict than existed then. It seems like every time you turn around, there's a new conflict somewhere else, and a lot of times it's funded by the same people who should be reducing it. Should be reducing the threat. They're escalating it because they're mistaken if they don't believe that somebody might not act. I see
Yeah,
what's going on in Israel, and I think that Netanyahu is absolutely capable of throwing the first nuclear weapon at somebody. I think that there are a couple other people in the world that are absolutely capable of throwing the first nuclear weapon. And to say that nobody ever will, I think you're making a mistake. If
sure.
you push people and you push them, you part of me feels like they're pushing them just because they know they will be. And the US has no problem throwing them. We would just prefer not to throw them first. If we can blame somebody else that we had to do it because somebody else acted first. So you force somebody else to throw a bomb so that you can justify everything that you do afterward. And so I think that's very, very wrong, and we shouldn't be thinking that way. But unfortunately, I don't trust our government to think any way other than that. We just, that's the way we think.
Yeah.
Well, George, I very much appreciate
Well,
you coming. I have a little
me
bit of
too.
a time thing. I very much enjoy
I know.
talking to you anyway. I just like it. So I think you're very well versed and know a lot about a lot of topics, and I respect that, and I respect you, and I'm very
Thank you
glad to
very
have run
much.
into you in BRICS.
I respect you too. So, and thank you for this coffee machine that brought us together.
That's right. The coffee machine. I forgot about that. But
Yeah,
thank
coffee
you.
machine.
How do people follow you? How do people follow you on your channels? How about putting a little plug in for how you get a hold of you?
Well, we have a YouTube channel which is now 45,000 followers, rising fast.
Good,
Uh,
good.
and we just created the Telegram channel, so it's called Fréquence Populaire. Maybe you have the link, and invite people to subscribe. It's free, and it helps us a lot, of course, on Telegram, on Twitter, and of course on YouTube. And as I said, very soon we will have some shows in English, so you may follow some geopolitical talks with our very funny French accent.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, I am
Thank you.
Samuel Trapp. I have a show on damradio.com, which is also an app you can download and listen. And we have a good number of political advisors that speak on that channel. And so you should have a chance to go look at that. I have my own YouTube channel at Samuel Trapp, and I speak some in Russian also. And so George, I thank you very much. And
Thank you, and we'll talk in the future. I think. once again.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you. You have a very good day, and this will end the broadcast.
Have a good day, everybody.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.